Okay, we're now live. Cool. So, everyone, welcome to the second episode of Behind the Curtain with me, Aaron, from Fair Spark Books. Today, I'm joined by three super awesome creators, and in this episode, we're going to be diving into the world of Comic Cons. And as always, if you're watching us live, feel free to leave questions in the chat, and we'll try to answer them as we go along. So, I'm going to get them to introduce themselves. So, we're going to start off with Steve Tanner. So, go ahead, Steve.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Steve Tanner. Most of you will probably have encountered me at some various conventions around the country because I do a fair few of them. I write comics. I create comics. I'm probably best known for being the guy behind Time Bomb Comics. That's been around now for 12 years. And the main book I'm known for is an anthology series called Figlock, which is an anthology all set in 18th century.
And then next up we have Nick.
Hello, I'm Nick Prolix. I write and draw a comic about a wide boy with a ridiculous quiff and a wide awake suit called Slam Pixel. And I'm also the artist on Cockney Kung Fu in the Awesome Comics anthology, which has just wrapped up issue 4.
And then last but not least, Matt Garvey.
No one cares who I am. Let's just carry on.
Fine, I'll leave it there.
Less said about me, the better.
All right. So, yeah, so today, thank you for joining me, guys. Last week we had a nice chat, various bits and pieces around Kickstarters. And this week we're just going to have a little chat around comic conventions and what they mean to us, why we do them, how we do them, our do's and don'ts, etc., stuff like that. So one of the first things I would like you each to answer is just, why do you personally do a con? And I'll start with you, Matt, since you didn't want to introduce yourself.
How dare you? How dare you? Why do I do cons? The main reason I do cons is to try and get my comics out to as many people as I possibly can to build my readership up. That's pretty much it. And I enjoy it. I enjoy seeing people. I enjoy talking about comics. I enjoy selling comics, and I enjoy the comic vibe.
Awesome.
There you go.
Sorry, I'm just drinking some water, getting ready. so
professional, Aaron. So
I know. Wow, I told you it's informal. I was going to bring some whiskey. So Steve, being the veteran of comic cons, how about you?
Very similar to Matt, really. It's for me, the conventions are pretty much my main distribution channel. It's really where I look to kind of promote and sell and reach as many people who might be interested in the work I'm doing and the books I'm putting out as possible. At the same time, what's really great about the conventions for me is that sense of community. I'm sure we'll go into this in a bit further detail as we continue the conversation, but it's really that kind of social aspect. So there's that networking element as well. So that I think probably both two things go hand in hand. And personally, I find the convention experience probably a really relaxing experience. Now that could well be because I've done so many of them, but it's certainly for me. I always when I'm stepping in the convention hall, I immediately feel calm. I immediately feel relaxed. So from me, from a health point of view, it's a wonderful thing to be in. I'd happily do one every week if I thought I could get away with it.
If I could travel to one every week, I think I would do one. Because I'm based down at the bottom of just near Dover, so literally any convention is like 3 or 4 hours away. So not good on that front.
Well, I live in Birmingham, which is quite central, so pretty much anywhere is usually just a couple of hours away.
You're all right then. Yeah. So moving on to.
Well, what about Nick?
Well, I was going to ask Nick the next question.
Sorry.
No, go on then, Nick. Why do you do cons as well?
It's community service. I did something very bad once.
See, this is why I didn't want to raise it.
Yeah, but no.
I knew the story.
It's that thing, isn't it? You know, it's building the audience one reader at a time. It's meeting people, giving them your book, seeing what they think, recognizing faces. I do find it quite not stressful, just it's a little bit of work, a little bit hard work sometimes. But on the flip side, it's interesting hearing Steve say, you know, that it's got a kind of therapeutic aspect to it, because I do find it very reinvigorating. You know, I do find that it's very rare that I've come away from a con not feeling kind of hyped up to come back and, you know, make something new, push on with a project. I think, you know, it's very good for you know, pushing your creativity, keeping you kind of enthused and inspired and excited about the hobby.
Yeah, I have the exact same thing when I do cons, because I'm not a writer or an artist and I do the publishing side of stuff and running the charity. For us, when we go for a lot of just networking and establishing and getting our brand out there and the charity out there as well. And every time that we go to convention, the moment I leave, I'm already writing stuff up in the car of who I want to collaborate with next, the ideas that are flying around that have come out of all the conversations we've had in the night before the convention or during the convention. So yeah, that definitely feel that fire coming from whenever I go to a convention as well. So it's really exciting. So definitely interesting to hear from you and Steve about the different, how you both feel differently. So one of the questions I was going to ask is, when you guys first done a convention, had you been to many before, and how did you differ from being a punter at a convention compared to actually finally tabling at one? So anyone can answer that one. Okay,
well, I first did I did my first table behind the table selling. This would be in 2007, and before then, the last con I'd been to a con 1 year previously, which was that same con. Now, this was the days where there were only literally 1 or 2 conventions across the country per year, which seems a different world now. But I'd gone to a convention in 2006. It was the first convention I'd been to for a good few years, probably since the early 90s. And it happened to be in Birmingham, and I just went for the day. I just thought it'd be a fun thing to do. And when I got there, I saw all these kind of independent comics that have been produced, and they just blew me away, because the quality of them was just fantastic. Because what I'd remembered in the past from the conventions back in the 80s and 90s, that it was very clear if you were walking around a convention and someone was selling an indie comic and it was small press, simply because of how it looked and how its production values. So there was a great big, there was a clear divide between what was small press, what was perhaps indie or semi-pro or pro. But suddenly it seemed that divide had gone, and I was picking up books and I'd never heard of them before. They were brilliant, and I came away with just an armful of stuff. But more importantly, I came away with a personal resolution to be at that same convention 1 year later, behind the table selling a book, and that's what I did. So that's how I started. So it was from that, really. So it was the convention experience was key to me in actually taking the plunge and getting my own work out there and starting the publishing route.
Oh, awesome.
I've got I think in some ways my story's probably quite similar in some respects to Steve's, but also I think there's the big difference is that the first con I went to was with my students. So it was about 4 years ago, and we just spent 6 weeks, 8 weeks maybe, making comics as part of this diploma, these sixth formers that I was working with. And the idea was that they were going to make these comics and then they were going to have to go and sell them. And I just had no idea about, small press. Didn't. It just went on the internet, typed in, comic conventions in the nearest to me. What came up basically in the October half term, and it was Nottingham. And so I booked a table, and me and like four of the students kind of rocked up, and we didn't have everything. We had like a tablecloth, I think, and these mini comics, literally that we'd photocopied, and they'd had to sort of staple themselves. And they spent these four kids, they spent the day selling their comics to people that were coming past, and they had a great time. And I was just, it was great for me because I just got to sit around and not have to do anything. And they were engaging with people, and the really interesting thing, kind of feedback that we sort of worked out from doing it was, what sold wasn't the best looking comics, like the most polished, the most the best draftsmanship. Those comics weren't necessarily the ones that shifted the most. The comics that shifted the most were the ones by the people the four kids who turned up on the day to actually sell them. Even though people, and it wasn't because they were just forcing kids to people to take just theirs. People were coming, but there was something about engaging with the person who'd made this product that translated into a transaction, if you like. So I spent that day, never having been to a comic convention before, wandering around just thinking, well, this is fantastic, this is great. At that point I was doing the Sheep and the Wolves as a web comic, and I was like, well, I'm gonna have to come back next year. I'm gonna get a table, and I'm gonna have a comic, and I'm gonna sell it. And again, sort of like Steve, that's what I did. Lit a fire under me, and I went away, and I had a deadline to sort of work to, and got my banner made up, and rocked up, and again had a fantastic experience. I was next to the Everington brothers, so I basically had got like a masterclass and kind of how you do it, but we're sort of watching them, listening to hearing their spiel, ad infinitum, and you kind of work out what works, what doesn't. You look around, see what other people are doing, and again it was just the buzz, the excitement, the energy, meeting people. That's
okay. I had I only started tabling last February, and that was at True Believers at the Cheltenham Racecourse. And before that, I'd only been to maybe 2 conventions before that, and they were just MCM Londons, so they wasn't even really too focused on small press. And I think even back then I hadn't really gone around the small press area too much. I think I'd seen it kind of gloss through and then moved on. But I do remember a long time ago getting a book from the Everton brothers, one of their Drunken Bunny series. I forgot what it's called now, Malcolm Magic or something like that. And for me it is so different being at a convention than actually tabling at a convention. I just feel like you get such a community from being on the other side that I just didn't see too much walking around, if that makes sense. So I had no idea what to expect. I remember that me and my fiance turned up with Little Heroes Anthology #1, and we had our charity banner and a few things to give away. But luckily, I think we were at Troops, and we were next to Everton Brothers, like you was, Nick. So luckily, we all had someone next to us who could really show us what to do, and especially aimed at children as well. So that was really good. How about you, Matt?
How about me? What?
How was your first experience?
Selling a Comic-Con.
Yeah.
It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever done because I had no idea what I was doing. Literally, I'd been to one Comic-Con before, and that was at Kapow years and years and years ago. And I had no idea. Turned up, and I was like a deer in headlights for like the first 2 hours. And then I just started talking to people, worked at my little elevator pitch, and then I just started selling. And from then it was really, really easy. And now I do the exact same thing as I always do. And it seems to work. And people seem to come back, which is good. And people seem to like what I do, which is even better. And I love it. Cons are a great way to meet people and meet your peers as well. So it's good.
So now that you've all spent, pretty much a fair bit of time now doing different cons, do you guys find that you've got yourself into a routine of how your day goes, or is it still a surprise every time?
Like a well-oiled machine. Seriously. Now, do you know what? Selling comics at a Comic-Con is easy. And I'm not saying that to be, put people down for it. Because people are at Comic-Cons, they want to buy comics. Half the battle is engaging with people, just saying hello, and then you get people to come over, and then you just invite them to have a look at what you've got, have a chat with them. Don't be forceful, and 9 times out of 10 people buy them. It's not rocket science. So.
That's interesting. Do you guys find that as well, or?
Yeah, to me, much I agree with what Matt says. I mean, it's all about the engagement, really, and that's the key thing. And it's about, enjoying the experience while you're there. I mean, just have a good time while you're there. If you look as if you're having a good time behind the table, then the engagement with the people who are attending the show is going to be so much more rewarding and so much easier. And it's not all about making the sale, because that's the thing. It's about having those conversations, about meeting people. And you have some fascinating people at Comic Cons. You have some fabulous conversations. So it's not all about just trying to push a book onto them to get money from out of their pockets. It's about being part of that community. And I think if you do conventions regularly, you start to kind of almost build a presence. So it could be that that person that you had a couple of conversations with at the previous 3-4 cons may not have picked anything up from you. Suddenly they will, because you have that kind of that relationship. You've gotten to know each other. You've got to like and respect each other. I mean, it's a great sense of community. I think that's a really important thing. It's about enjoying it while there. I mean, I think every con is different. I think, and you can never really predict, I don't think, how a con will be. Because there's never any guarantee that you will sell a book at all, let alone, more than that. And I think once you do cons, get into the habit of doing cons, you tend to kind of have, you tend to notice like little trends. Like you'll notice that for the first hour or so, it's usually generally a little bit quiet because people are all milling around and kind of seeing what's there. Then it starts to pick up, and then late afternoon it tends to quieten down again. I mean, and usually cons always kind of follow that kind of pattern. And I think if it's the first time you've done a particular convention and you're not familiar with that pattern, that first hour or even hour and a half, where there doesn't seem to be any interest in what you have on your table, can be really scary. But it's kind of realizing that that's how it works. And I think it's a great thing to get to know the people around you as well. So get to know the people. So the people that, I mean, it's great that you guys were sat next to the Etherington brothers at your first shows. And what a brilliant kind of well, you know, who better could you sit next to at a convention if it's your first convention? That's great. But it is getting to know the people either side of you and having those conversations and building those friendships and building those networks. It's crucial to enjoying the convention, any convention. That's such a key part of the community, becoming a part of the actual comics community rather than just pitching up with the sole purpose of selling your book and going away again. I think that's a really key thing.
Yeah, I think that highlights a question that I got asked quite a lot in the run up to this live stream, which was people asking how much money people make at conventions. Now, I'm not going to ask anyone to say how much money they make at conventions. I'm going to personally be doing a video about that soon, but it does highlight what you're saying about it's not all about making money at a convention. So from my point of view, being a charity and a publisher, our main focus of going to conventions is to get our brand out there, to get the charity out there, get people know what we're doing, and then getting people the confidence of seeing us over and over again at conventions so that they can see that we are in this space and we're here to stay and we're here to, there are books that we have. And we tend to find that we have a spike of sales after a convention online that are literally, when you look at the addresses, from that area of the convention as well. So for us, it's always been about that over money. But do you also feel that way, or
there's something about like conventions as part of like the small press ecosystem that I think, like, you know, there's places where you could rock up every Sunday to Car Boot and try and sell your comics out the back of your car. Well, yeah, people walking around, you know, you could do that. I don't reckon you'd shift many. I wouldn't, but you know, I reckon Garvey could. You know, I mean, you could. You know, but the, you know, when you think about how difficult it is in terms of getting your comics into comic shops,
yeah,
right? And I don't mean difficult in the, you know, I just mean, you know, it's a bit of a laborious, you know, ringing people up, emailing them, you know, sending out the books, then, you know, then following them up. You know, chasing invoices and whatnot, you know, or even, you know, trying to go through the rigmarole of, you know, Diamond or, you know, one of these distributors or that sort of stuff. You know, basically the conventions are, you know, apart from Kickstarter, apart from your big cartel or your Etsy shop, you know, the convention is where you're gonna do most of your sales. And you know, I think there is. I have in the past, and I've done it before on mailers and stuff. I've, you know, put out, you know, this is what I sold at this convention. You know, I did it last year actually after True Believers, because I had 2 years worth of figures to compare. You know, there's not and you know, and we're talking, you know, we're not talking. If I made enough to cover some petrol and, you know, get me a Burger King on the way home, you know, it's a great day.
Yeah.
You know, I'm always happy once I've made that first sale, and then I can go and spend that money.
You know, that's my coffee for the day.
I mean, one of the things I tend to do is to buy a comic, you know, before the doors open, so I'm having to play catch up. You know, it's kind of. But I do think that the sort of sales, not the sales aspect of the convention, but what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that they do, like, I wonder what would happen if 1 year, you know, 4 or 5 of these cons didn't happen. You know, and you know, actually what that would do in terms of people being able to, you know, connect with their audience. You know, I think actually the conventions are super important in terms of building this. You know, there wouldn't be this community without these shows. You know what I mean? Like, I think having been part of some other, creative. It may be hard to believe, but in the past, I used to stand up and do poems. They didn't even rhyme. And there's none of this sense of.
I can believe that, Nick.
There is none of this sort of community on the scale of the small press comic scene. Even before you start thinking about indie genre publishers, people putting out sci-fi novels on their own, and that sort of thing. I think conventions, like I say, they are absolutely vital to the ecosystem of this thing that we do.
For me, it's all about the money. I know that sounds really harsh.
I've been sat next to you. I know that.
I know. Don't get me wrong. I love the community and I love seeing people. But when I'm at the show, I'm at the show. That's what I'm there to do. I'm there to make money. I'm there to sell books. I'll go and do my shopping and say hello to people before the show. The doors open, and I'll buy what I want to buy. And if you're not buying a table, I'm not buying your book. But when the doors open, because every penny I make after like table costs and stuff goes back into making more. So for me, I know it sounds horrible and it sounds really shallow, but for me, it is about generating as much money as I can and selling as many books as I can. My wife is my best friend, and if I'm spending time away from her, it's got to be for a good reason. And I'm there to do a job. I treat it as a job, and I know I'm an arsehole.
No, I agree with Matt. I'm at the same. I'm pretty much more in line with Matt there. I mean, it is work, so it's enjoyable work, and I think that's the key thing. But it is there. I mean, the way I plan my convention schedule each year is to kind of try and ensure that I'm going to reach out to as many people as I can across the UK to sell books. So that is I mean, that is a key driver for me is ensuring that when I go to a particular convention, I'm feeling relatively confident that I'm going to hit a certain kind of benchmark in sales. Now that's something which has only kind of built up over the years, because I think when you first start out, unless you're incredibly lucky or incredibly talented or both, the first few shows you do in the first couple of years can be quite tough. But it is kind of building up your brand, building up your recognition, building up your audience, and the bigger your audience is, the more likely you are to get a readership who will be actively engaging what you do and be looking forward to buying the next book you put out at the next con they see you at.
I think people need to decide what they want to do a con for. Do they want to? And again, there's no right or wrong reason. I've got an agenda of what I want to do at a con. But if you're going there to socialize and be amongst your peers and have a good time and have a jolly, that's fine as well. There's the way I see it. There's always two different people. There's the people there that want to sell and want to get their books, and there's people that just want to have a chat and see friends and have a social. And whatever makes you happy, as long as you enjoy the show and you're there for whatever reason you want to be there, there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's something that I've been trying to figure out myself as well, because I only started doing cons last year, and for the whole of last year, for me, it was more focused on, as I said before, getting that brand going and getting that recognition going. This year, it's shifted focused, like you say, it is shifted towards I'm publishing books for other people now, so that there is a reliance on me getting those sold for them as well as for me on that front. And being now a small publisher as well, it means that I need to try and utilize the time at conventions for both, for making sure that I can find new people to work with, new books to publish, while also selling. So that is something I need to work out myself personally, because I need to start bringing someone along with me who can stay at the table and is probably better at selling than I am. Who can smile probably would be a good one.
You do smile. It's just creepy.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I'm trying to.
There it is. There it is.
That's not a good idea. But Yeah, so you've been at conventions now for a while. You kind of know what you're doing, what to expect. So what do you guys generally have on your table at a convention?
Our books.
New comics.
Yeah.
New comics.
Do you try and aim to have something new for each con, or do you have like a period, so many cons, then another book, or?
Every MCM I do, I try to have at least 2 new books on my table because people come back. People are not going to buy the same book twice. They have, but the general rule is they don't buy the same book twice. So if they come back, I want to have something else. And then if they ask for the second book of something, oh, do you have the next issue of the Eva? No, I don't. But I've got these 2 other books that you may like, and they tend to pick those up instead. So it's always having something fresh there because I've been only doing cons like yourself for a couple of years. I've been doing it for just over 3 years now, and I've seen people at Comic Con selling the same books they were selling at my first con, and they wonder why they only sell 10, 15 comics because you're selling the same stuff. You know, it's horrible, but never mind.
There are 2 audiences, I think, at every convention. There's the local audience, and there's this. Who, you know, the people within a certain geographical region, you know, they come to this con, they come every year, maybe, or, you know, it's their first time, maybe they're going to come back the next year. And there's this other audience that's mostly made up of the other people at the, you know, tabling at the con, but also there's a kind of wandering con fan goer, you know, who'll do like do the circuit. You know, and they will you'll see the same person. So you might see people year after year at the same con, but you will also see the same people at 3, 4 conventions that you do during the year. And partly, I think that's kind of why I always try and have something new for every con that I do, so that those people that, you know, when I come by, they're going to swing by and say hello. I want to have something new there for them to be able to pick up. You know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess for you that's a little bit easier than Matt and Steve, because you've got your art side of stuff to do as well, haven't you? So you can do prints and your sketchbooks and stuff as well. So that's really interesting.
But I think it's always been a bit like that. Even when the days where there was just 1 convention or 2 conventions a year, what you would find that everyone would kind of be working to get their books out for that particular convention because that was the opportunity. And I think, but certainly for me, because I do so many conventions a year, it's impossible for me to get a new book out for every convention. It's impossible. But what I try and do is that each time I go back to the same kind of city, I'll have something new at the table that wasn't there the last time I was at that city, and that's how I try.
Oh, bit of feedback going on there. Yeah, that makes sense. So you go for a location strategy over every kind of convention.
Yeah, what I try and do, I try and kind of have a spread across the. So in any year, I've pretty much covered, you know, Scotland, Manchester, Leeds, London, Birmingham, West Midlands, Southwest. Some places are just too difficult for me to get to. So I've not managed to get to Ireland. I've not managed to get to the north of up to the Highlands, that kind of stuff, and around by Dover way. Again, that's, you know, just beyond. But I try and kind of work out my calendar around those different locations. So I'm not just doing a particular county again and again and again, because there's enough cons now that you could do 20 cons in 1 or 2 counties and not leave 1 or 2 counties. It'd just be in the West Midlands or something. But I think all that's going to do is kind of feed in, almost diluting your own audience, and it touches on that kind of transient con community who go around all the regular cons. So you will see, you know, at every Birmingham convention or convention close to Birmingham, and I'm sure it's the same with London as well, Manchester. You will see that same community of people going to those different shows because they like the convention experience. But you know, they're not going to necessarily, you know, buy or repeatedly off you because they've already seen you, they've already picked something off from you. So and I also try and gear it around the big conventions. So although I do a lot of big and small ones, I tend to kind of try and sort out my publishing schedule that tie in with things like the MCM shows, because they are the cash cows, and everything else kind of follows. So I plan my publishing schedule around those big events, and then try and take into account the smaller satellite events.
So do you go to the same ones each year, or do you tend to like juggle it up a little bit every now and then, or do you have a set that you stick to?
Yeah, I've probably got about maybe a dozen that I will do year in, year out, because they're either, you know, conventions where it's been, they're proven that, you know, I have an audience at, or they're really well produced shows, and I really enjoy being part of them, and I really like going to support them. So something like Troops is a fabulous show. So every year I would happily do Troops, you know. Other ones, you know, I'll tend to like, you know, maybe chop and change them depending on how they are. But there's certain kind of key shows that I will always look to try and do if I can. So, you know, you got True Believers, you got Nottingham Comic Con, Kev's show. You got I love what Dan Mallier does with Leamington. There's some really great shows around, as well as the big super shows. One of the ones I do every year as well is the Steampunk Asylum, which is at Lincoln. That's one of my favourite shows to do, and that, you know, I go to that purely because it is the audience for some of the books I do. So that's a great one to do. I really enjoy it. But I try and mix it up a bit at the same time as well. Because I think if you just go repeatedly to the same ones again and again, you can start feeling stale. And I think it's good to mix it up a bit.
Yeah. So that brings me on to another question we got asked was, apart from obviously mainstream conventions that are aimed at comics and around that area, have you guys tried any other things like zine fairs or a fair that's specifically aimed at a genre of the book that you're doing? So if it's like a tank book, you went to a tank convention or something like that. Have you ventured anywhere in there? Or
I've looked. I haven't done it yet, mostly because they seem to be pretty pricey. But there is a sort of sub genre of kind of retro themed, mostly around kind of like, you know, people that like to dress up, sort of pin-up fashion and retro car, you know, enthusiasts, and rockabilly, you know, music, and that there's a few kind of big shows, really almost like festivals, really, I think.
Yeah, I've been to one.
All right, okay, well, and I kind of figure that, you know, that's the sort of thing that I might, you know, I'd like to have a go at, but at the minute it's always seemed a little bit kind of prohibitive in terms of the pricing of the actual table. The one thing that I did almost do last year, and I might try again this year if it comes up, was an event at King's Cross, where it was basically a vintage car boot sale, and it was vintage car, people selling stuff out of the back of vintage cars, and they would pair you up with, you know, if you were a vendor, they could pair you up with, you know, someone who'd, you know, done a you know, refurbed his, you know, he's God knows what.
You sure this isn't a car key party, Nick?
No. Well,
yeah, I'm just saying, you know, like they pair you up, you know, exactly. You pick your red.
Well, that'd be typically me at that trying to flog my comic when everyone's going around in the suspenders. Yeah.
I like your beard.
Yeah. So yeah, I've looked at those things. I've yet to do it, but it's definitely something that I think, I think there is, like Matt says about, the Comic Cons, you're selling, you're selling comics to people that are there who want to buy comics, but part of the trick is finding the people within that who are interested in the subset of comics that you happen to be, trying to sell. Whereas, I think if you could find the other side, like Steve says, you find the steampunk, fans, and within that, there's going to be the subset of that group who are going to be interested in a comic. Like I say, I reckon there's going to be someone, with their victory curls and their, rockabilly, out of 100, maybe 2 of them are going to be into comics, but I'll get those 2 people because I'll be the only one there selling comics.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. It's something that I definitely want to look at more as well, because aimed at children, there are definitely a lot more events that we can do that are just not comic focused. So that's something
you need to be doing, like school fairs and stuff like
that. Fairs, fates, all that kind of stuff is definitely where we can get into. That's something we're trying to look at in the local area at the moment, and then try and go from there. So the next question we have, it's actually from Russell Olsen in chat, who has said, okay, I want to hear everyone's sales patter. So I think, Matt, how do you approach when that person's finally at your table? What do you do to make them buy?
Well, if it was Russell, I'd tell him to buy a comic. I'd get the hell away from my table.
That's true.
But no, do you know what? All I do is if someone stops to look, to say, feel free to have a look, and I ask them if they'd like me to tell them a little bit about the books, and then literally I do like a 5-second pitch of each of the books, and I usually end on a joke, and they smile, and then they'll gravitate to the one they like the look of, and then I just leave them be. And if they want to chat, I'll chat to them about comics. I'll ask them what comics they usually like, in mainstream and stuff like that, and we'll just have a chat. And if they buy something, they buy something. If they don't, hate them.
So do you have your 5-second patter for each of the books written down, remembered, and
memorized?
Yeah.
Every book. You pick a book, I can tell you my pitch.
Do you have like a special page that you'll pull people to in those books as well, or is it just?
I usually have them open on a splash page, or where I think the art's particularly good, or a joke, as in the case of Chunks. And I always say to people, if you read this one panel, if that makes you laugh, then you'll like the book. If it offends you, I apologize. And I think I've only upset 2 people.
That's so not true.
Yeah. Well, strangers. I've upset strangers. I upset people I know all the time. but it's, again, I know it sounds horrible, but it's easy. It's really, really easy. There's all you got to do to sell comics at Comic-Con is be nice and friendly. Don't be sitting down, look at your phone. Stand up and look at people and talk to people. And people are there because they want to connect. They want to talk. They want to buy comics. It's not, again, it's not rocket science.
Okay, so you've got 8 people watching right now. How do you sell them Chunks?
Chunks. That's usually the last one in my repertoire of comics on the table. And by the time I get to that, I go, or I've got inappropriate dick jokes, and then they laugh. and then I have one panel, and I say, like I said before, have a read of that. If you like that, you'll like it. If it offends you, I apologize. And if they chuckle, I would tell them that's the tamest joke in the book. And that's the litmus test, and if you like that, I think you'll like the rest of it. And normally people go, yeah, and they'll buy it. So
fair enough. How about you, Nick? Are you as exciting bunny as Matt is, or?
No, I've been I've been sat next to Matt before, and
stroke the ego, Nick. Stroke the ego.
And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think he's a consummate salesman, but it really is no pressure. But he has got it down absolutely pat. Like it is just
stop.
You do hear the same thing on a loop. for 7 hours, but it works. Right? He knows the books. He knows what he's, you know, he's not umming and ahhing about, oh, this is a bit like this or a bit like that. But he gives people the space. He lets the book do the talking for him, really. You know, and the thing that I think works on his table is that he's got a range of stuff. Like, you can go there, and if you like superheroes, he's got a superhero book for you. If you like comedy, you know, the young ones, he's got something like that for you. And if you like, you know, sort of thrillers and dark, edgy
sci-fi,
stuff,
steampunk, murder mystery. You know, if you want it, I've got it. And if I haven't got it, you don't want it.
Yeah. For me, it's like I say to people, you know, this is my comic. It's a bit like Only Fools and Horses, but with more immigrants, you know. And if they, and, you know, if they don't, then, you know, if they don't look like, you know, they're a Daily Mail Brexit support voter, then, you know, we tend to stop and we have a chat. If they're slightly older, then I might throw in a reference to Minder. But, you know, that depends. You know, that's basically as much as I sort of mix it up. But oftentimes people stop because they want to have a look at the art, so they'll look through my, you know, my pages. I always have my original pages out. People will often stop and just have a look, and then we can have a chat. You know, do you draw? You know, yes, no. You know, we talk a bit about that, and then if they're looking like they're digging the art, they're vibing the kind of you know, the influences and the style and stuff, then I'll pick up the book and I'll show them that, and I'll go, you know, over this page actually, you know, this becomes this in the comic, and then, you know, we sort of shift the conversation around to the actual book. But yeah, I think it's a lot easier. There's lots of ways in to the take. You know what I mean? Like, and I think having the art there is a big draw. It kind of counters the impact of the wild hair and the beard, I think.
So, Steve, how about you? Anything that's different from?
I mean, very similar to what Matt said. It's about having more coming across and having a friendly conversation rather than coming across as a second-hand car salesman and trying to push that deal through. So it's not being in the face. It's kind of giving people that space to take a look and browse through, knowing when to kind of step back and just leave on to it. But what I've done is, if it's a bigger show and I've got table space, I might bring some props with me for the flintlock books. I've got like a wooden treasure chest which is full of you know, coins and jewelry, and I have that on the table. I'll have some flintlock pistols set up, and those kind of things get people across. The best prop I ever had, I can't use anymore because unfortunately she grew up. Because I used to, when my daughter was born, I used to, the first few shows, this is back in 2010, 2011. I used to bring my daughter to the shows, and I used to put her on the table in a Superman baby grow, and basically have to drag people in, and it works. You know, it is great to kind of do
I've been to cons. I've seen your daughter cosplay as your character. That's you're still making her work.
But she's doing that out of personal choice.
Sure. Yeah, having something on your table that draws people in is definitely an interesting aspect, because I don't know if you've been to a convention. I know Samuel George London has done a couple. He done Nottingham and Troops, and has sold out all of his comics on both conventions days. I reckon it's only because he's bringing 10 with him, but don't tell him that. But he has an interesting tactic where he gets people to his table by playing a bar game. So he has bar mats that are from the book, from the world in his book, and he does that simple game where if you can flip the bar mat and catch it, then you get to keep it. And somehow in that process of people playing games, he sold them a book at the same time, and I find that very interesting. And it's something that I've been toying around with, especially because having a children orientated table, I feel like having something that they can come over and interact with is definitely something I want to look into more. So like you say, having props from your book or art that they can look through, I feel is definitely a good way to draw people to your table, even if it's just for them to initially be there engaging, so you can get that conversation going where you can give them the 5-second sales pitch on your book.
I think there's quite a few people who've got like nice little gimmicks, games, things that happen, you know, John Tucker, you know, Death Roulette, you know, so maybe, you know, you play that, you know, and then probably you also buy the book as well, you know, but also, you know, maybe even if you don't buy the books, you know, you might want to play the game, you know, you spin the wheel and then there's, you know, it comes up with a death and then he draws you, you know, being decapitated by a, you know, vengeful gazelle or whatever it is that you know that it says. I've sort of toyed with the idea of doing like a sort of spin, you know, kind of like, you know, spinning game where you spin the little plastic game of life type thingy, and you know, and there might be some various things like, you know, if you buy a book, do a spin on the thing, and you know, you get like a, you know, Wheel of Fortune, and you know, you can get like an extra thing like a, but again, you know, yet to actually do it, but you know, it's the sort of thing that I think anything where you can like incentivize people to sort of stop and want to engage.
I think that kind of thing works at smaller cons. I don't think that would necessarily work at big ones like MCM and stuff like that, because the footfall's so huge. People are just constantly walking by your table constantly. Right. I don't think you need it.
Where you've done because you've done the thing with the mug before, right? Like
yeah, but that's just an extra incentive. That's, you know, like, you know, I always say to people, you know, like if I've got you know, an extra or something or other, you know, the 10th person to buy, you know, 4 comics will get it. But it's not like a game to draw them in. That's just an extra incentive, you know, and if they are the lucky person, they get it, you know. So it's, but I just think like things like, you know, Troop stuff, like where it's more of a family oriented show, I think games and stuff are a fantastic idea. I just think MCM is just, it's so intense. It's non-stop. I don't know how it may work. I don't know. I'm trying to think from the ones I've done. It's a tough one, but go for it, I think.
Yeah, the trouble is, Nick, with Matt's 10th person coffee mug is no one ever was the 10th person. So.
I have, you know, there are plenty of pictures online of people that have won them and T-shirts and stuff. So no, I never cheat people. I had 2 guys come up to my table at my first MCM, and I said, "Look, basically one of you is going to win it," and they both bought it, and one got it, and the other one didn't. So I sold 8 comics. So it worked, you know. But one of them was genuinely so I always did like the 10th, the 20th, you know, the 30th. Every 10 customers will get something extra. And I think that helps, because I think people like something for nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I always have like a free print or something like that.
We've all done Kickstarters. We all know everyone wants something for nothing. So, yeah, well, that's good. So I think in that we kind of covered like the layout of your table as well. You mentioned, Matt, about making sure you have some books open on pages and stuff like that as well. That's very important. I always feel that make sure you have some books open so that people feel encouraged to pick up your books.
And stand up at an angle as well, so they don't have to be on your table. Because I've had people come over and go, I saw the ether from over there and I really wanted to see it. So they've come because of that. And if it's flat on your table, they can't see it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other questions we had was about like banners and stuff on your table that's not necessarily your comic, but is obviously, like you say, that eye-catching aspect that draws people over. What do you guys usually approach? How do you approach that yourselves?
In terms of,
like, you know, like whether you have banners or I've even seen some comic tables now where they do have those like shelving bits on the side with some merchandise and stuff. So apart from obviously the mainstream things such as your books and your prints and your art, what other aspects are you using to try and draw people's eyes amongst the crowd?
That's comics and a banner behind my table. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think so. I think I've seen some layouts and they're just so busy.
Yeah.
So much there, and you know, you don't know really where to look. And I think those people, you know, people who set up that way, they can almost just turn people off as a result because people just don't know where to start, so they move on. So I think it's trying to keep something relatively simplistic in your layout. You know, it should be, if it's a Comic-Con, you know, traditional Comic-Con, it is about the comics. So just having that focus on the comics, and by all means, you know, if you want to have a little kind of some, you know, a couple of prints up there, but even with your banner size, rather than having this huge monstrosity that dominates, have something which really accentuates your display rather than kind of drives people away from it. Because I've seen some displays where they're almost like they're boxed in. They're almost like they've built a barrier or a wall between themselves and the you know, the people attending the shows. I always find that surprising when people do that.
Yeah,
I just want to push them over when I see that.
Well, I saw one once where it was just a wall but a square hole in the middle for their face.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what's going on here. So I just walked past. But
it's like loosely, you know, the psychiatrist, the doctor is in.
Yeah.
That's what.
Deep cuts, Nick, like it.
Okay. So the other question, I did have another question. Where'd it go? It was in chat.
One thing I would say, sorry, just to
go on.
Just jump back, was just this last year I've had my prices written out, you know, so just very clear, and had you know, on one sheet kind of on the table, almost like a menu, you know, this is
how much for the whole night, Nick?
I'll say, yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, extra if you want me to whisper sweet nothings.
I want the full girlfriend experience.
Yeah, you get the poetry if you but you know, something like that. So again, you know, because people you don't want to have that thing where someone goes, how much is this? And you're like, you know, whatever. And then they're like, oh, right. And then they put it down and kind of,
oh,
you know,
right, yeah.
You know, having the, you know, whether it's tags or, you know, some just, you know, make the, you know, the actual
prices visible. Yeah,
exactly.
No, I agree. I bought some big neon stars last year, and then I just wrote them all in. But you still get people go, how much is it? It says £3. How have you missed that? But you know, some people. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I've since I started last year, I've had various people say both things. Some people have said make sure you have prices, and then some people don't put prices because they kind of like to gauge the person and see what kind of deal they're going to give them, which I think is a bit
dodgy. So basically, they're going to try and charge as much as they can for a comic.
Yeah. So I would definitely suggest the bit at the end that we're going to do is like a couple of do's and don'ts, and one of them is do put your prices up.
Yeah.
Don't shaft it, because you see it where some people do that thing where it's getting to the end of the day, so they start really rapidly dropping prices.
I can understand that.
That's
if you want to
fine.
drop your prices, you know, but hiking them up just in case you can make an extra couple of quid out of something, I think that's very cheeky.
Yeah, that's what I was going to clarify. I was going to say that doing that's fine, but not the other way. Okay, so what's the time? Okay, so we've done an hour, so that's pretty good. I've got through kind of all the questions that I had lined up.
You missed one in the chat.
Did I?
David Robson asked, how do we feel about cosplay at cons? So I'm doing your job for you, Aaron.
Oh, well, yeah, sorry. Well, do you want to answer that one?
Do you know what? I love it. I think the more people that come through the door, the more footfall, the more chance I've got of selling something. And there's nothing better than a Comic-Con when you sell a comic to someone and they say, I've never bought a comic before. So I say more Funkos, more cosplay, more anime, more anything, as long as it gets butts through the doors.
Ooh.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm a great fan of cosplay as well. I think one of the biggest lines of bullshit you will hear is people who say cosplayers don't buy comics. It's a load of nonsense. They do buy comics, and I know that because they buy mine. And they're not just buying mine; they're buying other people's as well. What a lot of people don't realise is that obviously when they're walking around and in their costume, they may not have money on them, but then invariably what they do is either the end of the day or the second day, they'll be round again, maybe in a different costume, maybe carrying some money, and they will buy. So I think cosplays are great. They add so much colour and life to a convention. I think some of the things, some of the outfits and some of the costumes that they wear are absolutely fantastic. So some of my most regular kind of readers, I suppose, who regularly buy from me at conventions are cosplayers. And I know there's lots of other kind of guys who table at cons, and they get a huge amount of cosplay interest as well. So I think if the only reason a cosplay, if no cosplay players are ever buying your books or what you're doing, it's simply because whatever it is just doesn't appeal. But that's the same to anyone else that's at a convention.
I think people who don't like cosplay have never had someone cosplay as one of their characters.
I was going to say,
right.
you've I've seen. Was it Nottingham last year or the year before?
Yeah. My little mate Amavir, he came dressed as the Aoife, and it was amazing. Yeah. It really tickled me. I was just like, that is absolutely lovely. Someone that likes something that I've helped create so much that they've gone, and and he made his own mask and everything, and I was incredibly touched. It was lovely.
Again, look, it might never happen, but one day someone turns up, big comedy quiff, wide awake suit. I'm going to just shoot my load and a massive happy wee and just give them all my comic. I don't know, just going to be, I would be over the moon, made up. But yeah.
I better get my quiff sorted then.
Yeah, just sort your hair out.
If I had the hair, Nick, I'd do it for you.
I'm not shaving the beard off though, so it's going to look weird.
Commitment to a bit, Aaron. Commitment to a bit. Come on.
What's Dave put in chat now? He says, I never understood the appeal of cosplay until I tabled at cons. That's those folks' creativity, and they really add to the atmosphere. So exactly. I like what you guys have just said. Brilliant. So I'm going to try and wrap it up a little bit now for you guys. So what would you say, if you get like 2 or 3 bullet points, what would you say your do's and don'ts for the first timers who are just thinking about doing their first cons?
There's no reason not to do it. Like if you've got a book, even if you just turn up, don't worry about a banner, don't worry about, just if you've got something to sell,
there'll be an audience for it.
Exactly. Just turn up because the experience will be fantastic. Because
and people are nice. People are so nice at cons. It's amazing. Apart from Nick.
Yeah.
I don't know if you turn up, Matt, dressed as one of his characters, that could really like rip a hole in the world. I just don't think it'd work. All right, I've just asked anyone in chat if they had any last questions, but any final thoughts from you, Steve? Or
I think a key thing that anyone should do when they're going to convention for the first time behind the table is try and take some time to get to know some of the other people that are behind the table. Because the one thing about the comic conventions, no matter if they're really tiny little provincial ones or if they're the big super shows in London or whatever, the comics community is incredibly friendly and supportive towards each other. And the amount of support and knowledge and just that sense of being part of a really nice group of people is brilliant. So don't just go and try and just see it as just a selling experience and try and sell your book and that's it. Take time to get to know the people who are also there. They will happily share their own knowledge, their own experience, which will then help you going forward. Because I think that's one of the key things that makes every convention experience so enjoyable for me. It's that catching up with people which I've only got to know through conventions, but also then meeting people who they're doing it for the first time and being able to kind of have a chat with them. And if they're feeling a little bit nervous about it, put their minds at rest and give them some tips and give them advice. It's a really important thing. So be part of the community, not just be part of the convention.
Take your own food and drink as well. Seriously, yeah, because sometimes you can't get away from your table, and it's important to drink. Take some fruit. As I said before, don't be sitting down. Don't be on your phone. Just stand up and talk to people, and just be nice. And don't smell either. Have a shower before.
My number one tip is get to know the guy next to you, because he's the one who's going to help you when you need to go to the toilet.
Well, exactly.
You need to go off my table for a second.
That is the only time I ever leave my table, is when I'm going for a wee. That's it. So just end on that.
Every time I ever leave, you go away. Nice.
Yeah. Perfect.
Words to live by. Actually, before one more thing, I know I've heard you mention it before, Matt. Difference between standing or sitting.
Yeah.
You're standing, right?
Unless you're an artist doing commissions, and or there's some medical reason why you can't stand up. Stand up. It annoys me. It really annoys me. It's because I've seen people, they sit behind their table on their phone looking down, and every time someone looks at their table, they just walk straight past, and it annoys me. And it's like people that turn up late as well. Oh, I hate that. I think that's so unprofessional. So unprofessional. Just stand. It's not. I know it's hard work. Don't get me wrong. It is hard work standing up for 3 days, but that's why I sell. It's why I sell so many. My comics are no better than anybody else's out there. I sell more because I work my nuts off. That's it. That's the only reason. But yeah, if when I see people on their phones sitting down, I just want to slap it.
Like a bag at the beginning where everyone puts their phones in and just.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. The only time you see me on my phone is if I'm checking the time, because I don't wear a watch. That's it. You see me, or I'm taking a sale. That's it. Through the old PayPal thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. People, stand up. Don't be late, and talk to people, and you will sell. And know your comics. It's easy.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's going to be the end of that. So what I'll quickly do is, if you guys want to go around and just quickly self-promote where you can find yourselves online, if you've got any Kickstarters or any new books out, now's the time to shout it out. So we'll do the same order as we did at the beginning. So if you want to go first, Steve.
Okay, great. Well, I do have a Kickstarter live at the minute, which is the Clockwork Cavalier Special, which is the first spin-off from the Flintlock series. It's chugging along really nicely. It's got just over a week left. And it's at the moment there's lots of extra freebies being added into it with unlocked stretch goals, and it's a great piece of work. It's the Clockwork Cavalier. He is basically a clockwork man that's been recruited into the Bow Street Runners to help them fight crime in 18th century London. So it's kind of clockpunk, which is kind of the period before steampunk. So it's a lot of fun. The artwork is fabulous. So please check it out if you can. Otherwise, you will definitely see me at a huge number of comic conventions this year. The next one I'm doing, I'm at Birmingham MCM, which is I think the third week of March, I think.
Okay, awesome. And Nick?
I'm at Nick Prolix on Twitter, at Nick Prolix on Instagram, nickprolix.com. Sign up for my newsletter, where you will hear when issue 4 of Slang Pictorial comes to Kickstarter,
which I can't wait for.
March. Thank you very much. And if you are in the environs of Dunfermline on March the 20th, I will be there, assuming the 7-hour drive goes without incident.
Well, good luck with that. And Matt?
I am Matt Garvey. You can find me at Twitter at at mattgarvey1981, or you can find me at mattgarvey.co.uk or my store, mattgarvey.bigcartel.com. And I've got everything from steampunk murder mystery with a strong female protagonist, vigilante superhero with a very unique twist, satanic superhero, inappropriate dick jokes. See, I've got everything.
There you go, Russell. That's his pitch. And Nick, David Robinson said he'll see you at Dunfermline and on the comic smell. So from me, you can find us on Twitter at Fair Spark Books and of the domain by the same name. And obviously we sell various different comic and books aimed at children. So,
which are very good also.
Thank you very much. So thank you everyone who's joined us. We hope that some knowledge has left our collective minds and made its way across the web to yours, even if some of it was rude.
I didn't swear. Can we just say I didn't swear?
Oh, we'll let you off. I'll give you a little brownie point later. And then, so if you enjoyed this podcast, obviously please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and then you'll get a notification when we go live next. The next one should be in about another week's time, and we're going to be looking at doing webcomics. So definitely come and join us for that. So thank you again, and everyone say goodbye.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.